Hey, everybody. Before we get started on the Dallas Cowboys versus Houston Texans here, a couple of things happened since I recorded the podcast. Number one is that Terrance Steele has been announced to have a torn ACL, so he will be out for the rest of the year, which means my concern on the podcast for what happens if Terrance Steele misses some time is quite real. Going to be leaning on Tyron Smith coming back, probably some Jason Peters, hopefully not Josh Ball in the scenario. So definitely ratchet up the concern there from where it was for me while I was recording there. And I also go on to talk about the return of James Washington and some of the Noah Brown passing snaps and how I wish that Odell Beckham would have filled some of those snaps. Well, the Cowboys went out and signed T.Y. Hilton to do some of just that and take some of those snaps in the passing down work away. Hopefully, that's their intention. Regardless of what the intention is, I think it could be a good deal to add someone that has talent like T.Y. Hilton. It's just a question of how healthy is he? That's obviously in question because he hadn't signed with anyone up until this point. So I'm a little skeptical, but hopeful that he'll be able to add something for the Cowboys. And I'm sad that we won't be able to see Terrance Steele for the rest of the year. Hopefully, the Cowboys can put that together and just fold that into what I'm about to talk about here when we go into the Cowboys. Thanks for listening. Here's the rest of the podcast. What's up, everybody? It's the Roundtable Sports Podcast. My name is Taylor McLean, and another exciting week of football in the books. I realized I could watch the DirecTV and YouTube TV. That's what I used for most of it, but I could use both red zones at the same time. So I got a double eyeful, all the games, and just made my 7 hours of football commercial list just even more incredible. So maybe you're not as interested in that, but I am excited. And I feel like it's week one. I still feel good about these games. There's a ton of exciting stuff and interesting stuff going on that I want to analyze. So we're going to try and hit a bunch of games this week. Before we get started with Cowboys, Texans, I want to shout out to the sponsor, Evergreen Power Solutions. For my Texas listeners, that you can give them a call. They'll go in there, they'll shop around for the best possible rate for your power right now. And then as things go along, they'll go back in, renegotiate the rate. If they can bring it lower, they will. If they can't, then they're going to keep it the same. And so you won't have higher rates. Sounds like a great deal to me. Give them a call at 888-886-6586 and hit prompt number 2. Let them know that the Roundtable Sports Podcast sent you. Once again, that's 888-886-6586, prompt number 2. Let's get to the football. And as I said, I had red zone going double time. So I was focused on a lot of things, but I still had the Cowboys game on another screen here. So I got a pretty good eyeful of the Cowboys game while it was happening. And because I had so many different things going, I don't think that I fully understood what was happening while it was happening. So I went back, rewatched it as I always do for these podcasts. And I have to say that I was a lot more upset when I was watching it in real time than I was when I watched it back. You never want your team to be losing or basically nearly lose to the worst team in the league at this point. And I know the Texans are 1-11-1 now. As far as worst teams in the league go, I don't feel that bad about the Texans. Like, I don't feel the same way that I felt about the Detroit Lions last year that I do about the Texans this year. There's a lot more spunk there. And I feel like overall, as much as I might like Dan Campbell as a coach, it feels like overall they just seem to have a better game plan week to week than what I felt like for the Lions at that point. Now, the Lions have really found something with the current staff and with their current offensive coordinator and everything, but that wasn't going on last year. And this is not to say or apologize for the Cowboys that I think the Texans are really that good either. The Cowboys should have absolutely taken care of business in a much bigger way on this day. But for everything that was happening in this game, I don't feel too bad about it. And I still think the Cowboys are a contender. It's just there's a lot of things going on there that we need to address as far as that status goes. It really did seem like the Cowboys were going to jump all over the Texans after the first drive and then stopping the Texans right afterwards. To have Turpin drop the punt and put the defense back on the field was a huge disadvantage to the team and allowed the Texans to keep it close at that point and allow them to stay within the framework of their offense. When you can do that and you don't have to push your lower tier quarterback as hard to make plays, that's a big advantage to an offense like the Houston Texans that is really firmly based around their running game. And of course, the Cowboys are set up to rush the passer as their strength as well. So you want to get the team off balance. You want to get them having to drop back more in straight dropbacks rather than play action and the like. And I guess in this instance, bring in Davis Mills as much as possible so that he has to make passing plays down the field. He absolutely made some of those, by the way, which is disturbing, which we'll talk about. But that's what you're trying to do with a team like the Texans. And it would have been a lot worse. And it would have come to those type of plays a lot sooner had the Cowboys been able to jump on the Texans right there and, possibly get some more points on the board, put the Texans down 2 possessions where they have to, really push things. Instead, what we got was a more even game script with the Texans not entirely successfully ran the ball 37 times. You don't get that type of game script if you're able to jump on them early. It used to be the same tenet as the Cowboys under Dak's early days, where you wanted to get a big lead so you can run the ball and rush the passer. Those things still apply to the Cowboys, just a little bit less because Dak does have the ability to throw better than he did back then. It's still a bit wonky, though, as far as the passing goes. And that is my biggest fear for the Cowboys going forward, is that Dak just and the offense in tow just looks out of sorts at times. Like they make boneheaded plays, or the ball skips off of Noah Brown for an interception, or Dak gets his arm hit, or he hits his thumb and breaks it. I mean, it just always seems like it's something. And a lot of times that comes down to these third down plays where he doesn't run for those third downs as much as he used to. And it's more on the short passing game. And I don't think that the Cowboys have the type of timing or a big enough, like, hardcore possession guy to be able to support that at times. It just seems like the offense gets derailed for the littlest reasons, and the throws just aren't quite where they need to be at those times. It's not all the time by any means. Dak makes throws, and he ran for a third down and slid too soon on that one. I mean, there's some of those elements there, but the fact that it comes down to the precision passing game so much and the timing passing game so much, that's my biggest fear overall, because it's going to come down to that when the Cowboys play the 49ers or the Eagles or whoever it is. And we're going to need to be at the height of our powers at this time. And James Washington, I'm glad to have him back, but he's not Odell Beckham. And I don't think they're wrong for not signing unhealthy Odell Beckham. You didn't see any other teams just jump to the front of the line and tie him down after the Cowboys didn't, but it still can be a problem overall. Like, Noah Brown made a huge play on that one passing play, but that pick was his fault. I thought. I mean, the throw was a little up, but I mean, overall, I just wish that we didn't have so many Noah Brown snaps and that there wasn't so much riding on him catching the ball for this team. It goes down to deciding we can't afford Amari Cooper and not getting enough in that trade overall when you saw all the different other trades that were out there for wide receivers. So that goes back to another poor decision that the Cowboys made at one point. I'm not against the money It's just those snaps need something. Like having Noah Brown out there for 34 passing snaps, that's not good, especially when he only gets to run block 14 of those times. He's like a tight end sometimes when he's out there. Wasn't good on this day with the blocking, but still, it gives me concern overall because CeeDee Lamb doesn't have the body type to be able to be everything for this offense. He can be a lot of things, and he needs to be a lot of things, and they need to continue to get him the ball with a chance to go up for it and run with it after the catch. Both those two types of things, they need to rely on him, but I wish they didn't have to all the time. They need other threats out there, and Gallup also has limitations overall. He's good, and I really like him, and having him back in the lineup has been key to this Cowboys team and why they have been playing the type of football they've been able to play. But once again, just not that alpha guy that can be the security blanket for Dak and that Dak can rely on overall. But it just seems a little dysfunctional at times. And a lot of people talk about Kellen Moore as a potential head coach, and I worry about that for them too, that being the next team. I'm glad to have him as a Cowboys offensive coordinator and everything. And I thought a lot of the running plays, and I think there's a lot of creative stuff that goes on that wasn't going on previously. But sometimes I feel curious about the play calls, just as I feel curious about Dak at times. It just doesn't feel like everything's clicking at the right moments for the Cowboys. It clicks, but sometimes it misses, the chain misses on the bike, and sometimes that can leave you flailing when you're on top of two wheels, and kind of feels like the Cowboys are always on top of two wheels, and there's always a little wobble to what they have going on. And whether that's Dak, whether that's Kellen, or whether it's just a combination of the two things, and the wide receivers, throw them into that mix, I can't tell exactly, but there's just something there that unsettles me. And maybe it's just that we abandoned the run too soon, or we aren't consistent enough with our running. I don't know. There's just something in the mix in the Cowboys offense that gives me some pause. And then you lose Terrance Steele possibly for some time. They haven't come out and said how bad or good it is on his knee, but there is some concern there, and rightfully so, because as soon as Josh Ball got in the game, he could no longer pass block at all. And that pick that Dak got his arm hit that nearly cost the Cowboys the game was his fault. That was Josh Ball's fault, no doubt about it. He got blown up in that moment and got Dak's arm hit, and it's a problem. And you noticed that they put Jason Peters in there at right tackle, and it wasn't as big a problem. I just don't know that Jason Peters can play 71 snaps at this point. That could be a problem. You've noticed that they've been kind of mixing him in to left tackle, getting Tyler some snaps at guard. And I have to wonder what the composition of the offensive line is going to be if Terrance Steele is going to miss time, because he's been really good, and having him and Zach Martin on one side gives you a strong side to run towards. Although I don't mind running towards Tyler Smith either. It's just he's not as strong as that other side with Connor McGovern or with Jason Peters. I think McGovern is just fine for the record, but it's just another level that the Cowboys line could go to if they're able to have Steele out there, then bring in Tyron, have Tyler Smith as the guard, rather than having to possibly move Tyler Smith to right tackle. I wonder if that's on the table. Maybe it's going to be just Jason Peters has to play more snaps, and maybe Terrance Steele comes back. I haven't said at this point. I'm recording this early Monday morning, and we haven't gotten any information on his injury. We also don't know. Apparently Diggs has hurt two of his thumbs. Jake Ferguson had a neck injury. That's kind of a worry, a little bit, not huge, but it's been nice to be able to work him in a little bit and take advantage of his blocking skills. And of course, we lost Jonathan Hankins too. So definitely some key injuries. And this is for every team. The 49ers lost Debo for some time. And that's kind of where we're at in the NFL season. This is a game of attrition. That's why you see people sit guys a lot down the stretch when they can afford to do so, because it's just about who do you have healthy in the moment that playoff game takes place. The 49ers, if you play with them on Madden and turn off injuries, that's one thing. You've got Debo and you've got Jimmy G in there. Brock Purdy isn't bad, by the way. So that's one thing, but they don't really have a replacement for Debo. You can't replace somebody that's so singular. So that's what it's going to come down to for all of these teams. And now the Cowboys have questions at right tackle when they already were having questions at cornerback, with the Cowboys having to stick boss man Fat out there instead of Anthony Brown. That's also an issue overall. So definitely need to keep your fingers crossed on the offensive line side, because as much as I talked about the passing game and something feels off there, the running game has been the savior of this team so far, and their ability to do so certainly does give me some hope for the Cowboys. They're going to be going against really good defenses in the Eagles and 49ers when it comes down to it, and possibly the Buccaneers if they're able to get Vita Vea back, who exited his game as well. So a lot of things going on that front, and the Cowboys are no different. Hopefully Tyron Smith will be able to come back and we can kind of get a different composition. And I think that's what it's going to take for these Cowboys to really get there, because the defense hasn't been as locked down as it had been in previous weeks with the injuries that I just mentioned, and with Micah Parsons seemingly not being Micah in this game a little bit. They haven't really come out and said it, but he has been limping around a bit and seemingly was a non-factor in this game a little bit. He was fine and held up, but it wasn't the same destroyer of worlds that we've seen in previous weeks. So hopefully for the Cowboys, we're going to need to see him get healthy if this defense is going to be something, as well as the rest of it is played. I like the way that the defensive line played in this game, and the fact that Bohannon and Carlos Watkins, Odigizua gave us some solid snaps up the middle is certainly something to be excited about. Hopefully Dorrance Armstrong is okay as well. I think he got hurt on one of the last plays of the game and was in a boot, so that would be a bad blow for the Cowboys. He's been good. Getting Anthony Barr back was obviously good as well. Sam Williams, he's been playing better. And of course, the safeties have been a revelation, and one of the reasons that the Cowboys are in this at all. Javon Kearse, Donovan Wilson, Malik Hooker, who didn't have a great game today, but has come up big in other games. The big question is going to be at cornerback for this team, though. With Trayvon Diggs out there, especially, the Cowboys are going to get picked on in the other parts of their secondary. The good thing is that I don't mind Dalton Brand as far as him being the slot cornerback at all. He's been good for the Cowboys since he's had to step in for Jordan Lewis. The one that I worry about more, because, okay, Dalton Brand may not be perfect, and they may go after him, but it seems like he's going to hold up. The big one that I'm worried about is Boss Man Fat, as I mentioned, Kelvin Joseph. If you don't know, Boss Man Fat, with some letters in front of it, I just call him Boss Man Fat, which may or may not be disrespectful. He's going to be the Waldo of this secondary going forward. Like, teams are going to be looking for him to throw against him. He has all the talent in the world and made some nice plays as the game went on, for sure. But when the other team's looking at you and looking to find you because Diggs is out there on the other side, you have to hold up for this defense to really be what it could be. And Anthony Brown had been doing a great job. I really liked what Jordan had been bringing too. So to lose both those guys, like Brown's for the season, not 1,000% Jordan's for the season. I don't remember exactly what his injury was off the top, but these guys aren't coming back right now. So it's going to be on these younger guys to come through with the rookie Brand from Fresno State and Kelvin, which they drafted him in the second round because of the talent. And you can see it. He's very fluid. He can run. He's plenty fast. He's plenty big. It's just he's not in the right position all the time. And they made big plays on him. They were well-made plays, but this wasn't like he was playing up against really quality wide receivers. We're talking about Amari Rodgers, who just got kicked off of the Packers, and more. And just it hurts my head to think that Davis Mills was able to make those passes on him. And we're not exactly talking about a top flight talent at quarterback, top flight talent at wide receiver, or scheme wise. Like, this isn't a great scheme either. So the fact that Kelvin was on display and got picked on a little bit does give me some pause and should give the Cowboys pause overall. Maybe I'm a little bit more concerned about Micah just not being quite what I being a little hurt and under the weather. He's got to be healthy. He's got to be playing at an LT level for this Cowboys defense to go anywhere, because we're going to need that cover. Because as much as I might like the rest of the Cowboys in coverage, it's going to be interesting to see what Kelvin does from here on out, and that's probably going to dictate as far as this team goes, along with the health of our big time pass rushers, including Dorrance. Like, Dorrance has been really good for the Cowboys overall, so don't sleep on that part as well. So, okay, crazy that it came down to this for the Cowboys. They got through this barely, and you definitely don't want to see this from your team overall, to struggle with the team. But once I sat down and watched it all over again, some very minor things go the other way, and the Cowboys are fine here. The other thing being that the Texans came out with a very weird game plan that I want to talk about. I hadn't seen this in some time, but the Texans were rotating guys, not on a strict rotation, but by what the play required. We had Jeff Driscoll, who was a threat to run with the ball, and Davis Mills, who was a threat to throw the ball. And this is not something that you see a lot with NFL teams, that I find to be a big success a lot of the time. But for this game, catching a team off guard with this, running an entirely different offense, not entirely, but the different offense with Jeff Driscoll, with the quarterback sweeps and his threat to run, than what you were probably expecting or had seen on film and prepared for. And that can throw anybody for a loop for one game. It's the same principle as, teams that slow down after, or quarterbacks that slow down after you get 6 games worth of film on them, because you know what they want to do, you know what the offense wants to do around them, and you're able to force them to do things that they don't want to do and ultimately can't do. And that's how you win as the defensive coordinator, right? Well, we hadn't seen this Jeff Driscoll, Davis Mills two-headed monster before, and it seemed to catch the Cowboys off guard a little bit and allowed the Texans to move the ball more than they had been moving the ball previously. So, not to explain this away or apologize for the Cowboys at all, but once I had kind of thought about what had happened here, it made a lot more sense, and I wasn't quite as upset that the Cowboys had to pull this drive out of their butt at the end to do so. But don't underestimate the fact that they did do so. I may have mentioned that I thought the passing game was wonky and everything, and it seems disjointed at times, but make no mistake, that drive wasn't the easiest thing to put together, and Dak put it together in a pretty nice way and made plays when he had to. And that's the difference, in my opinion. As much as I might not think that Dak is on that elite tier of quarterbacks, I also think he's above what I call the Kirk Cousins line, that where he's capable of creating outside of the intended play and making more out of a play than what is just the first read or where the play is supposed to go. So while I might have concerns about Dak and his elite intelligence, I think he's still better than a lot of quarterbacks out there. And it'll just be interesting to see where the Cowboys land. Talking about the quarterback situation and the unexpectedness of it for the Texans, I just don't know who makes that decision for your quarterbacks. And maybe it's a sign of desperation. Maybe Lovey feels like his job is on the line here and he needs to show, some sort of coaching chutzpah here, or chutzpah, but I just don't get it really. They always say, if you have 2 quarterbacks, you have none. And if tanking's the goal, then kudos. This is probably going to get you there, even though it led to some effective offense. It's just not the way in today's times to really get anything going in the end. So tank, great. You're going to get the first pick overall, I believe. I don't think there's any way that anybody's going to catch the Texans at this point. So you could have won this game probably without consequence. And you did go for it. You went for it on 4th down and could have easily made it had the Cowboys not made some big plays. And you had Pierce. If you have Pierce on all 4 of those downs, it's hard to think that they don't get in at some point and win this game. And he may be hurt. They haven't come out with how long yet, so you got to keep an eye on that for them. But it just really made me question everything as far as Lovey being the coach going forward, that this is what they decided to try. I guess you're just throwing things at the wall at this point trying to show something that and hoping that you don't get fired and are able to see this team in good times and not just bad times. Or hey, maybe you want a nice buyout so you can retire. Who knows what's going on in Lovey's head at this point? I have to think there's a lot of things in play, but I was just WTF the whole time when I realized that this is what was going on, and it was the game plan to have both of them in there. Ultimately, for the Texans, I think more about which quarterback I would want if I was them, because it seems like they're going to have their choice. And I don't think that you can really count on being as bad next year as you are now to skip a quarterback and try and get like Caleb Williams next year. Because basically you're going to be choosing between Bryce Young, CJ Stroud, and Will Levis at this point. I think that it's Stroud or Young that you'll ultimately be choosing from. I think Levis is a prospect and could give a team something for sure. I'm not writing him off, but I think that you have a better upside with Stroud, and I think you have better current quarterback skills with Bryce Young. And I find myself, even though with the size and everything, I find myself thinking more about Bryce Young for the Texans. I think he provides immediate competency at the quarterback position when he gets in there. And it'll still take some time for him to hit, his stride on that point, because the game moves a lot faster than any quarterback can realize. And quarterbacks that win with the mental side of it, sometimes it does take them some time to hit their stride. Like Tua Tagovailoa, despite having a rough 2 games, it's taken him, he has found some stride now that he's able to beat the teams more with his mind. Still got a long way to go with that, as we've seen with him. But I think Bryce would offer the highest upside in that part of it. Stroud has the better skills, though. I'm not going to fault them if they want the bigger guy who has the better physical skills throwing and running. So maybe he's not quicker than Bryce, but you get my point. I don't know. I flip-flopped on this a bunch of times. I think I would take Bryce for them. I want the guy that I think I can lean on, and I think that's going to take my franchise somewhere at this point. But the point is, you're going to have to choose. We've got a lot of time between now and then, but if you're a Texans fan, you're looking at Tankathon, and these are the things you think about. The good news is, too, it's not like the team is playing at that Detroit Lions 0-16 level. This team is better than that. They've been friskier at times. They just have the perfect quarterback for the tank. Whether it's Jeff Driscoll and Davis Mills, or just Davis Mills, either way, or just Jeff Driscoll or Kyle Allen for that matter, these guys are going to end up costing you in the end, and you're going to end up getting your guy. It's just, do you pick the right one? And are either one of the 3 guys going to be a franchise guy? Because there's no what I call it is the Andrew Luck prospect. Granted, Andrew retired early in the light, but just a can't miss super. Whoever's got number 1, they're super going to draft that guy no matter what. LeBron James, Anthony Davis, those type of guys. There's not that generational type guy that's a no-brainer at this point. That's what you want when you're the number 1 pick, but it could be worse. Like you're the Jacksonville Jaguars and there is no number 1 guy, and you can't even trade your pick because you have your guy. You were number 1 the year before, but it was so bad quarterback wise that there wasn't even a guy that people wanted to trade up for, right? So it's not that bad, but it's also not a no-brainer guy either for you. So that's tough, but I think you have to take your shot at this point. And I think I'm leaning Bryce. Before, I haven't got into it as much because I'm worried about this. There's plenty of NFL football going on, but I'm interested to see where the Texans end up landing, because I think they've iced it at this point. Like, there's plenty of games to play, but I think that unless the Bears are really able to pull something off, or Denver just maybe Russell doesn't play, not that he's been great or anything, but I don't think they're going to get there. Maybe the Rams, maybe New Orleans. There's some contenders there, but the closest team, is 2 wins ahead and are probably going to get competent quarterback play. Maybe not from Denver either way, with whoever they put in there at that point, whether it's Russ coming off of a big hit or not. But still, Texans are definitely going to have to figure it out, and we'll look forward to that decision. And luckily, they've got another pick coming that could possibly be in the top 10, depending on how Deshaun Watson keeps playing. So future could be bright. The Texans are just going to have to draft. They're at a talent deficit now, but they're getting out of it. I like the way they've been drafting. Petrie, Collins has something. They still have Laramie Tunsil. The offensive line looks better. You drafted Pierce. Who saw that coming? Nobody did, including the NFL. And you still have the Cooks card to play. You could trade him if you wanted to. The defense doesn't look absolutely uncoordinated. Stingley's out, but he looks like a hit as well. That's huge. You got to hit those cornerbacks when you're drafting up at the top like that. So you hit that pick too. That's a big sign. Lovey and this Jeff Driscoll thing, be damned. I mean, I hate that. And I cussed to my dad, not at him, but when I was talking about all of this because I was so pissed off about that decision. But ultimately, it's going to be Caserio and making that organizational functional by being able to draft good guys and draft themselves out of this talent deficit. And these are good signs that they could potentially do that. So good for them. Anyway, that's what I've got for this game. Appreciate your time and listening. If you haven't downloaded the podcast, download it. Let me know that you're here and listening. Throw a like on there. Subscribe if you're on YouTube. There'll be more videos coming out. It was a beautiful video week again, so we'll have more of those coming out so we can analyze that. And have a great rest of your day.